Paying off my mortgages was the worst decision I've ever made. Welcome back to Novarise, your channel for financial education. So today we're going to talk about refinances. There's two components about this video that's going to benefit you. The first one is we're going to teach you how to run the numbers so that you can decide when is a good time for you to refinance and whether you should take that offer for refinances. Depending on the timeline that you're watching this episode, we're currently in 2021 and we are in a year where we got access to cheap money. The rates are actually very low and everyone is looking to refinance their existing mortgages, and also why not buy new real estate, taking advantage of the low rates. So I've gotten a couple of inquiries from you wondering, hey, how do I know if I should refinance my mortgage? Because they're offering me a lower rate, but is it worth it? So that's what we're going to do today. So that was part one. Part two, it's going to basically show you how I actually did the calculations. I'm going to walk you through how I looked at the numbers and figured out, hey, what's the best move when it comes to doing a cash out refinance in this case, meaning using my property to pull out the equity out of it and then using that same cash that I acquired through that property and expand my real estate portfolio. So let's just dive in straight into the calculator. So a couple of housekeeping items. You will only enter items in the cells where it's telling you to enter the value. Do not touch anything that is in red. Yes, I know I can lock the cells, but believe me, I've tried it before and things have not worked out when I got hundreds and hundreds of people asking for access to this calculator. So it hasn't worked out in the past. So what I decided to do is to create a copy that no one will be able to edit at all whatsoever. And in order for you to get access to this, you will read the instructions that are right here, right? So in essence, just to show you, you have to just come into File, make a copy, and then name the copy of the document whatever you want and go ahead and just save it in your file. I have gotten tons and tons of emails from people trying to access prior calculators that we've designed in Novarise, asking to get access. We will not respond to those type of requests because in this video, I'm actually teaching you how to get access to the file. Okay, so the link is in the description box down below. And in order to make edits, you're going to have to follow the instructions right here, just like I just recently showed you. Okay, all right, so let's move on to comparing mortgages. So the way this exercise is going to go is that we're going to take the information of your original mortgage and then we're going to compare that with the new refinance mortgage, just so you can get a sense of whether it's worth it for you to refinance or not. Then once we've done that, what we're going to do is to take a more advanced approach and we're going to start entering fields for those who are looking to get a cash out refi in order to get access to that liquidity. For those who haven't heard of the term cash out refi, here's a video that right here that I created a couple of months ago. Feel free to check it out. But after you're done with this video, do not get off right now because it is important for you to stay on this video right now and learn what I'm about to show. So once we're done with that comparison, what we're going to do is scroll all the way down and we're going to do a bit of a more advanced approach to figure it out whether it's worth it for you to pull money out and use that additional equity that you have acquired over the years using a cash out refi, and then use that extra liquidity to continue to expand your real estate portfolio. So make sure you stay all the way until the end. So the calculations are going to be done in two parts. So let's begin with part one, right? So you got the original mortgage right here, but because I don't have access to your mortgage, we're going to use my mortgage. Okay. So my original mortgage was closed in 2018. The sales price of the property was $159,900. And after the down payment and all, I ended up financing $127,920. So we're going to come in here and enter $127,920, right? And then the rate at the time I got was 6% for 360. So we're talking about a 6% rate and then 360 month. How do I arrive to that 360? Well, very simple. You take 30 years, right? And then you multiply for 12. And that's how you get 360. Now, I've gotten a lot of inquiries as well and prior calculators asking me that hey, the formula is not working. Maybe there's an error in the file. There's no error in the file. I've checked this file a million times, but you do need to pay attention to the details. So if you have a 15-year-old mortgage, you can't just simply come in here and put 15, right? It's always based on months. So you're going to take 15, you're going to multiply times 12 because it's 12 months in 1 year, and that's how you get 180, and that's the number that you're going to enter here. But in this exercise, we're dealing with a 30-year mortgage, okay? So $127,000, that was the original loan amount, 6% for 360 months. That's a payment that I had to make, and that's principal and interest only. It doesn't include escrow, which is insurance and property taxes. And here on this line, you're going to see that the total interest that I will be paying in the span of 30 years will total $148,180.21. Okay, so that's on the original mortgage. Now, for those who are thinking about refinancing, or maybe already have an offer in hand and you're trying to figure out if that's the right move for you, that's very easy. That's what you have this side of the calculator, and you're going to proceed to fill in the blank in here. So in my case, the new offer that I got was for $164,250, right? So we're going to come in here and do $164,250. And then the rate that I got was for 5.55% for a 360 term, right? Now, in case you're wondering why so high, remember, these are commercial loans and they tend to be higher in interest, but the benefit of it is that the loan is closing on my LLC. So that way I'm removing myself from the equation and, all of those benefits. Yes, it is a little bit higher compared to a residential loan, but hey, at the end of the day, I'm not the one paying for the mortgage. My tenant is, okay? So that's a different way to look at things. So right from the get-go, if you're looking to refinance and compare the two mortgages, by me entering the new number, and for those who are wondering why is this a higher number, well, remember, appreciation happens, right? So equity grows over time in the property due to inflation, and now that's the new value on the property. And for the purpose of this exercise, they ended up giving me a 75 LTV. So that's what the amount came out. And when you punch all the numbers and the formula, you're gonna see that the total amount of interest that's paid in this refinance will be $173,340. So right from the get-go, if you compare these two mortgages, one at $148,180 and this one over here at $173,340, you're going to realize that I didn't save any money in interest. If anything, this mortgage is actually costing me money because I'm actually paying more money in interest. So right from the get-go, that relates back to the title of this episode, that refinancing was one of the worst errors that I've made because I didn't really get any benefit out of it. But this episode is not about whining. It's about taking a negative situation in this case and figure out a way to turn it into a positive experience. Okay. So for those who are actually trying to decide whether that's a good move for you or not, you can actually use this very first portion of the calculator to get to that conclusion. Does it really work? Of course it does. So let's just do a comparison. Let's say that you don't want to take all the equity out of your property like I did. Maybe what you want to do is just to simply refinance so that you can get access to a lower monthly payment. So typically when you refinance just to get a lower monthly payment, people tend to refinance only the portion that is owed in the mortgage. So in this case, if I had a loan amount of $127,920, it will most likely be for a much lower amount than this one. But for simplicity purposes, we're going to use the same amount just to show you that when you're refinancing at a lower rate, there are some benefits to it. So $127,920, we're going to replace this number, $127,920. And right from the get-go, you're going to see that you are, in fact, saving money with a refinance because you do, right from the get-go right here, you can see that you're getting a lower rate. So 6% versus a 5% with the same amount. Now, the question is, depending on the amount and depending on your financial situation, you might ask yourself, is this really truly worth it for $13,000? Because if I pull up my calculator and I take $13,180 and I divide this over the span of 30 years, that means that I am only saving $439 a year. So the purpose of this exercise is not to show off, it's not to say, hey, $439 is not worth anything, but going through a refinance, which is very invasive, just to save $439, I don't know if it's worth it. There are other less invasive methods like using 0% credit cards that could get you to that point without having to go through the madness of applying for a mortgage. Because even if you're doing a cash out refi or any refinance, that's still a mortgage. The bank is going to ask you for copies of the last 2 tax returns. They're going to ask you for bank statements and yada yada. I don't know if it's really worth it. But if what you're looking to do is to figure it out whether you should refinance or not, that's the first portion of the calculator. Now, for those who want to move on to the fun part and make things even more exciting, let's go ahead and run the numbers that I did in order to turn my negative situation into a positive one, right? So we talked about doing a cash out refi. So this was the amount that the lender was willing to give me, right? $164,250. So what I'm going to do is run some numbers over here to see if the total amount after paying all expenses was truly worth it. So here, if you're doing a cash out refi, you're going to come in and you're going to fill in these 3 pieces of information right here. So the cash out money used only if you're doing a cash out refi. In my case, I was, and that's for $164,250. So I'm going to enter $164,250. Now, if you have a pending mortgage, right, you have to put in the amount of your old mortgage because you have to pay the bank. You can't just take the cash out money and just run away and not pay the first bank, okay? You're going to have a lien placed in your property and that won't be pretty. So in this case, I personally didn't have a mortgage, but remember the title of the episode, I paid it off. And how did I pay it off? I ended up taking liquidity out of another company that I had and then move money into this LLC to pay off this mortgage. So the loan that I had was with myself, but I still have to pay it back because the other company didn't have liquidity. It was short on liquidity, and Uncle Sam doesn't like that. You have to prove that the expense was actually a legit move, and you have to do it through the proper channel. So in my case, I had to pay that loan back into my other company, and the loan was for $121,500. That was the old payoff amount. So after I pay back my old loan to my other company, I am left with $42,750. But wait, things don't end there. You always have to account for closing costs because that's a major cost in refinances and even on a mortgage, okay? So in this case, when I look at the Alta, I have as closing costs $14,929.47. So I'm gonna punch in here 14,900. What was it again? 929.47. So 929.47. Okay. Now we're getting a clear depiction, the true numbers. So the real amount of money, the real cash that was left available for me to use at the end of all of this was $27,820.53, which I ended up using for the down payment of another property. That is great, right? I was able to pull equity out of the property and then buy another property with that money. What did you think of that move? Haha, let me know in the comment section below, okay? Now, back to the video. There's still one component that I haven't been able to answer you guys, and that is, was this really a mistake, right? I have to own up to the title. I said that refinancing my property was actually one of my biggest mistakes, and I still think it is. And here's why. So number one, as you can see, by refinancing this property, I was not able to save any money in interest. If anything, I'm paying more. I'm paying $25,000 more in interest. Now, depending how you want to look at things, well, that's true. Even though I'm paying more money in interest, it's not really me, the one who's paying. It's my tenant, the one who's paying it. And thanks to inflation, I'm actually getting access to cheap money. And if anything, Uncle Sam is actually paying me to get into debt. How? Why is that possible? I'll show you why. So the rate on this loan was 5.55. And if you pull up the stats to, get a sense of where we are with inflation today, as of October 2021, the inflation rate is 6.2. Okay, so remember that number, 6.2. Let's say I want to pull out my calculator, and then I'm going to take 6.2 minus 5.55. Voila. I'm actually getting paid by the government. I'm getting paid 0.65% to get into debt because this is still cheap money. It is so cheap that it doesn't keep up with inflation. And that's what I am trying to get you guys to understand and view money. And once again, in addition to this, the interest is not even being paid by me. Now, to take this a step further, I actually came across this article in the Wall Street Journal, which I thought it will be very interesting for you guys to check out. And this is a heat map of the annual inflation by region, by state, right? So depending on where you're located or depending on where you're planning to invest, you have to take in consideration the inflation rate and compare that with the mortgage that you're getting, because depending on that, that's when you realize, hey, what's the rate that I'm truly getting out of this? Because if you're in an area where inflation is at 5%, that means you're truly paying, so what, my mortgage was at 5.55 minus 5%. That means I'm truly paying this much in interest because due to inflation, things have been taken care of. So there are some areas, as you can see, that were hit harder than others. So if you are in California, you will see that the rate is somewhat on the lower end. If you're in a state like New York, you're actually were impacted the least. Even 5% to 5.5 is still not ideal, but hey, it is what it is, right? But if you're located on any of the red states, look at how inflation hit 7.5. Wow, that's quite high, right? So now back to the calculator. It is a mistake because once again, number one, I didn't save any money in interest. The second reason why I think it's a mistake is because I left my other company without liquidity. I pulled out $121,500 from another company just to pay off this mortgage. My other company was short by a six-figure amount. And it was short on money that could have been reinvested back into the company. We could have reinvested it back into the team. We could have reinvested it in advertising. And so we were kind of tied up for cash, let's say. And that's not ideal, especially in an inflationary environment like this one where nobody knows what's going on. So that was a bad mistake. So I paid it off and then I have to jump through hoops and loops in order to pull it right back. Now, reason number three as to why I think this was a mistake. Look at the closing costs. The closing costs are almost $15,000, okay? That is very expensive to get access to money. And yes, I understand it is the cost of doing business, but in my position today, I have alternative. There are cheaper ways to get access to capital at a much lower cost. An example of them could be 0% credit cards, right? And here, look at this. I jumped through loops and hoops for 4 months, okay? Everybody wants to get access to cheap money. So this whole refinance took me 4 months to get to, only to get $27,820.53. Once again, I know $27,000 is still a lot of money. And thanks to that, I was able to buy another property to add to my portfolio. However, will I have done this if I had other alternatives? And the answer is yes. I could have, once again, used a 0% credit card. Because if you come to think about it, let's say I want to take the $27,000, 820, whatever, 53, and I want to divide this by 4 months, right? Because it's how long it took. So on average, I was getting $6,955 every single month. Let's just put it that way, right? I mean, if you come to think about this, a credit card could have been giving me that. I didn't have to jump through hoops and loops and deal with the lenders because I don't know, for whatever reason, they always happen to call me and request documents at the wrong time. I'm either on a plane or I'm driving. And typically when they request documentations, they want you to give it to them like right then on the spot. And sometimes that wasn't possible. So it was 4 very stressful months that it could have been avoided if I would have gone the credit card route. And for those who are brand new, you're probably thinking, how could you buy a house with a credit card? Like, can I actually walk into a bank and then just give them my credit card? No, it doesn't happen that way. If you want to learn how to do that, there's a couple of episodes that I created a couple of months ago that talks about using services like Plastic or Venmo that you can actually check out and use their services to pull the liquidity out of the credit cards. Now, I know from time to time, I hear people complaining about the 3% fee that Plastic charges and stuff like that. Okay, let's just, cut to the chase. It is the cost of doing business, okay? Plastic has a team. Plastic needs to hire engineers. They need to maintain a platform. They need to do a whole bunch of things just to get their service going, and they're providing you with a service, right? The service is use our platform so you can get access to your liquidity at a 0%. You can use the checks that you receive from the lenders, but sometimes they don't come at a 0%. Sometimes they come at rates that are a lot higher. So for those who want a little bit more of clarification as to to, hey, is it truly worth using services like plastic? So we talk about 6,955, and plastic charges on average 3%. So when you multiply this by 3%, that means that for every transaction, you are being charged $208. And because it was 4 months, we're going to multiply this by 4 because we'll be using 4 credit cards and taking 4 times out the 6,955. That means that the total fees that you're paying plastic is a one-time fee totaling $834. That's even less than $1,000. So let me ask you this question. What would you prefer if you're looking to get access to liquidity and you want it cheap? Would you prefer to pay $834 to plastic, or would you prefer to pay $15,000 to a lender? You see, knowledge is power. It's just a different way to use that information available. And while working hard is important, it's also about working smart. In this case, what I did wasn't smart. I gave into my emotions. I gave into fear, thinking that if I paid off my mortgages, I didn't have to worry about people not paying me rent or not dealing with mortgage forbearances and stuff like that. But then I forgot a very important factor, and that it's inflation. And when inflation happens, the worst you can do is to take all the cash available and just pay off the debt, because in reality, debt gets destroyed by inflation. Now, it's that time. You were looking to learn about cash out refinance? Here's the episode right here on the side, so feel free to check it out so that it can help you complement everything you just learned today. And until then, take care. Bye-bye.